The American Civil War constitutes a very important part when we begin to discuss the history of the United States of America. This war was founded on the issues of money and morality, and this war emerged from within. That is to say, this war was not caused by any foreign attack or invasion from any foreign power. This is a war that broke out in the United States of America. But how united this country was will be a very integral part of our discussion on the American Civil War. So now let us get initiated to the American Civil War. This is not the first time that we are discussing the history of the United States of America. When did we again talk about the USA? When we were tracing the various political expressions of the spirit of nationalism, we discussed the American War of Independence. And what happened after that American War of Independence came to an end? It was the Treaty of Paris that was signed in 1783 between Britain and France that brought the American War of Independence to an end. Now, what did this treaty mean for the USA? Owing to this Treaty of Paris, Britain now recognized the independence of its 13 rebellious colonies. Previously, these rebellious colonies were under British colonial rule. But after that American War of Independence came to an end, Britain recognized the independence of these 13 rebellion colonies, and now these 13 rebellion colonies were given the shape of 13 independent states that together comprised the nation, the United States of America. These maps further illustrate the same idea. Previously, these 13 colonies were under the rule of Britain, and after the American War of Independence, these 13 colonies now became the independent 13 states of USA, and in this way took birth the independent nation of the United States of America. Now you must be wondering how these 13 independent states administered this new country, or how was the government structured in this newly formed nation? This brings us to a discussion on the division of power between these 13 states and the country as a whole. Let us find out how the government of the United States of America was after this country gained its independence from British colonial rule. Before we carry forward our discussion on the government of the United States of America after it got its independence, let us quickly focus on these two flags. On your left, here you can see the flag of the United States of America immediately after it gained its independence. So, this was the flag of the USA after US gained independence. And here you can see the modern day flag of the United States of America. Now, if you look very minutely, you will be able to tell me the difference between these two flags. Yes, you are right. On your left, you can see that this flag has 13 stars. And on the other hand, the modern day flag of the United States has 50 stars. Will you be able to tell me why the number of flags increased from 13 to 50? We can count these 13 stars that were present on the flag of the US immediately after it gained independence. Now you can take my word for this, because it will be bizarre if we start counting all these 50 stars. But 50 stars are present in the modern day flag of the US. Why is this difference seen in the number of stars? This is because formerly the 13 independent states formed the US, that is the United States of America, and these 13 stars stand for those 13 independent states. But the modern nation, the United States of America, has 50 states, which is why these 50 stars signify those 50 states that are together under the United States of America. Now this must have left you wondering how the number of states in this country has increased over time. This also speaks for the fact that these independent states were now gaining power. But how was power shared between the states and the central government? What kind of a government was prevalent in the US, and what form of a government is prevalent even today? For this, we have to initiate a discussion on the purpose of a constitution. Now, do you remember what a constitution is? A constitution is a written legal document that states how power is divided in a country. Now, to avoid any disputes or any issues or any kind of conflict pertaining to the division of power, a constitution is required by any independent nation. Which is why in the year 1789, the Constitution of the US came into being. This Constitution now stated how power was divided among those 13 independent states and how those 13 independent states together made up the country of the United States of America. So, it was this Constitution, this legal document, that laid out the political setup of this newly independent country. Now, this brings us to a very important question. What kind of a political setup can be found in the independent United States of America? The Constitution of 1789 gave the USA a federal system of government. A federal system of government can be a new idea to you. That is, you might not be familiar with what a federal system of government means. So, let us now find this out. That is, what a federal system of government means. Now, before finding out what a federal system of government means, let me ask you a question. What form of government was set up in USA by the Constitution of 1789? Was it a federal government, a unitary government, an oligarchic government, or a theocratic government? Yes, you are right. The Constitution of 1789 set up a federal government for this newly birthed nation. Now, let us quickly find out what this federal system of government means. This federal system of government implies that there would be two autonomous bodies. These two autonomous bodies would be the national government and the government that exists at the level of the states. These two governments together make up a federation. Now, how is power divided between these two governments? The national government is also known as the federal government, and it is the central body. That is, it exists at the center. And these various state governments are for each member state. So, power is now divided between this national federal government and the various state governments. Initially, there were 13 states, so there were 13 state governments under the United States of America. Now, this illustration shows you how power was divided between these two bodies of government. The scale here has not tilted on one side, which means that the national federal government held equal power as that of the states. The national government or the federal government that performed and functioned at the center took care of all kinds of external affairs. External affairs as in what kind of relation US will share with other nations, how US will expand its territories, or if US will wage war against any other nation. These are the major decisions that are taken care of by the US federal government. Now, what do these state governments do? These state governments exercise power on regulating trade, that is, trade within these territories, trade within these states. Along with that, it also takes care of any kind of internal affairs that lies within the borders of the states. So, while the Federal government takes care of things that pertains to the United States of America as a nation and its relation with other countries of the world. The state governments take care of things that pertain to the states alone. In this way, power is shared between the federal government and the state governments. Now, this is not to say that the federal government is more powerful, because the states also have the power to influence and regulate the decisions that are made by the federal government. So, in a way, you can say that the state governments get to exercise their power at two levels. At the level of the states, they can regulate all kinds of internal affairs, and simultaneously they also have a say in the decisions that are made by the federal government pertaining to all kinds of external affairs. Now, this federation or this federal system of government was established by the US Constitution of 1789. Now, how do you think the states got to enjoy any role in the central decision making process? To be a part of the federal law making process, the states, that is, the state governments, had to join the federal legislature. This federal legislature is known as the Congress. So, by joining the Congress, the state governments got to participate in the federal lawmaking process. Now, let us find out the various bodies that together make up this Congress or this federal legislature. The US Congress is divided into two bodies. What are these bodies? The two bodies are the Senate, which is the upper house, and the House of Representatives, which is the lower house. So, the Congress is divided into the Senate and the House of Representatives. Now, since the Senate is the upper house, it should ensure equal representation of all the states. So, to ensure equal representation, all the state governments, that is, all these independent states, get to send two representatives to the Senate. Irrespective of the size of the states, they can send two representatives to the Senate. And in this way, the Senate also ensures equal representation of all the states. Now, this federal system of government, together with how the Congress was established, shows you a very fair government. That is, it was a government of equal representation. All the independent states could have equal representation in the upper house, that was the Senate. While these independent states together made up the nation that was the United States of America, this in no way means that the independent states lost their autonomy. These independent states were very much independent and autonomous, and simultaneously they were a part of the United States of America. And as independent states, they got to send equal representatives to the upper house of the Congress. All this while, the point we have been trying to establish is that these independent states had equal representatives in the Congress, which is why they could also participate in the federal lawmaking process, and they did this through the Senate. Now, let me give you an example which will help you understand this division of power better. Suppose it is Teacher's Day today, and your teacher asks you which snack to order, be that a pizza or a burger. Now, considering there are 100 of you in the class, each student gets to vote for their favorite snack. That is, you have to vote for whether you want pizza or burger. Now, each student gets one vote. So, everyone gets equal representation. The teacher has already said that the snack that gets the majority of votes will be ordered. That is, if the majority votes for pizza, pizza will be ordered. And if the majority votes for burger, burger will be ordered. Suppose you want to have pizza, And in this way, you will also try to bring with you many other students who also want to have pizza, so that you can gain a majority. A similar kind of a thing happens in the US Senate as well. On the occasion of any ideological conflict, the states divide themselves into two groups, and the states try to bring more states towards themselves so that they can have a majority in the Senate. So in this way, you can also understand how these states maintain political relations among themselves. Whenever any issue arises, any ideological conflict arises, one group goes against the other. That is, one group of state goes against the other group of states, and the majority group gets to enjoy, or the majority group gets to propose its idea, gets to propose its say. Now let us find out under whose leadership these 13 states got their independence and who became the first leader of the independent nation of the United States of America. You must be remembering the name of George Washington. Do you remember what he did? It was George Washington who led the American War of Independence against the British colonial rule. And it was George Washington who brought these 13 rebellious colonies their independence. So, he was one of the founding fathers of the nation of the United States of America. It is for this reason that the people of the newly independent US elected George Washington as the first president, and he became the first president of the US in the year 1789. So, it was under the leadership of George Washington that America got its independence from British colonial rule, and then he went on to becoming the first president of this independent country. So what have we been discussing all this while? Previously we learnt that America waged the American War of Independence against British colonial rule. After gaining its independence, the 13 independent states went on to becoming the independent country that was the United States of America. A constitution was also drafted for this newly independent state, and a federal system of government was established. Power was shared very equally and fairly between the federal government and the 13 state governments. Simultaneously with that, the Senate also ensured that all the states had equal representation in the Senate and they could participate in the law-making process. Things sounded all fine. The able leader that George Washington was also the first president of this country. Now with this, America was gaining power, it was gaining prominence, because immediately after getting independence, it was now set out on expanding its territories. Now after this political setup of USA was established, America was gaining importance, it was gaining prominence. Because of the vast resources it had, it now set out on expanding its territories. It was developing as a very powerful nation. America had ample economic resources, and things were going uphill for this newly independent nation. But you will be surprised to know that this prosperity, this glorious state that came to the United States of America after its independence from British colonial rule did not last for long. This must have left you wondering, why did it not last for long? What happened after this? This is because after nearly 80 years of political stability, of prosperity, US now plunged into civil war. This civil war began in the year 1861. 100 years were still not complete from the time that the US gained independence, and within 80 years only, US now plunged into civil war. Now this very phrase civil war might also be unfamiliar to you, because you might not know what a civil war means and how it breaks out, and what can be the possible motives behind the outbreak of a civil war. Let us now devote our discussion to understanding what a civil war is, so that we have a clearer understanding of why the American Civil War broke out. The very term Civil War might have brought to your mind Captain America Civil War. Yes. Now, who were these Avengers fighting against? Were they fighting against Loki, or was it against Thanos? Now, you must be remembering that initially they were all fighting amongst themselves. These Avengers were meant to fight against enemies of the world, but they started off by fighting against themselves only. This, in a very simple way, explains to you what civil war means. Civil war means fight amongst people within the same group. All these people who belonged to the same group were fighting amongst themselves. Now let us understand what a civil war means in a political context. This will also help us understanding the American Civil War. In simple terms, a civil war refers to a violent conflict that breaks out between two or more groups within the same country. Now, this concept of a war might sound slightly odd to you. All this while we have known a war as something that means foreign invasion. Suppose I live in a country, and if any foreign or external power attacks my country, war will take place between these two countries. But a civil war is something completely different. This kind of a war happens amongst people who live within the same country. That is, all these people who were living within the same country, that is the United States of America, were now fighting against themselves. But why were they fighting against themselves? Few possible reasons why civil wars generally break out are the need for a better share of territory. Along with this, the hunger for more political control or the need for a shift in governmental policies contribute to the outbreak of civil wars. So what did we learn here? Make this very clear to you, that a civil war does not happen when an external power attacks a country or a nation. It emerges from within, that is, it emerges among the people who live in the same country. With this in mind, now let us try to understand why and how American Civil War broke out. The American Civil War broke out when the various states that together comprised this nation were in conflict with each other. These states were no longer feeling united. The cause of this we will come to later, because the various causes that together contributed to the outbreak of the American Civil War deserve our separate attention. We will discuss that later. But for now, remember that the 11 southern states of USA separated themselves, and together they formed the Confederate States of America. Initially, when these states broke out from the United States of America, there were not 11 states. Initially, 7 states broke out from the United States of America to form the Confederate States of America. And after the Civil War broke out, 4 more states joined them. So together these 11 states, that is the first 7 states that organized themselves as the Confederate States of America, and the 4 states that later joined these Confederate States of America after the Civil War broke out, were now against the federal government. These states were demanding their independence. The state now declared that they were separate from the central federal government. They were no longer a part of the United States of America. Now, what were the repercussions of this? As in, did the federal government respond to this very positively? Let us find out what happened after these 11 states together formed the Confederate States of America. After these 11 states together formed the Confederate States of America, the federal government realized that this was posing a threat to them. So, these Confederate States were posing a threat to the unity of the United States of America, which is why the federal government now declared war on the Confederate States. These 11 Confederate States that lie in the southern part of the United States of America were now engaged in direct war with the Union States. The northern states of this country, that is, the various states that lied in the northern part of the country, joined the federal government, because they thought that they should join the federal government and keep this nation, United States of America, together and not let it fall apart, which is why they joined the cause of the federal government, and together they formed the Union States. And these Union States were now warring against the Confederate States. Now let me tell you something. This is a point that you should remember. The northern states of the United States of America got an edge over the southern states, and there is a very specific reason behind this. Now let me tell you something that you should definitely remember if you are to understand the American Civil War. The northern states inevitably got an edge over the southern states. That is, these various Union states were more powerful than the Confederate States. Now, what is the reason behind this? As in, why were the Union States more powerful than the Confederate States? The Union States had joined the federal forces, and together they wanted to keep the unity of the nation, that was the United States of America, and they were fighting against the Confederate forces. Now, the states that are located in the northern part of the country have access to better resources, which is why these northern states are also wealthier than the southern states. Now, this gave the northern states an edge over the southern states, because the southern states were lacking in resources. They were not as powerful, as affluent and wealthy as the northern states. It is for this reason that the federal forces were more powerful, more mighty than the Confederate forces. With this, we have initiated ourselves to the American Civil War. The American Civil War was a war that was not just waged between rival states, that is, rival states who together comprised this country, that was the United States of America. This war instead was founded on the issues of social morality. This war was also founded on the issues of freedom and independence. This war lasted for 4 long years, and it has been one of the most horrific parts of the American history. This is because more than 7,50,000 people lost their lives to this war. Can you imagine how many people died only because of the American Civil War that lasted for 4 long years? In fact, a very strange thing about this war would be that families got involved in this war. This is because no foreign power or no external power was involved in this war. People from the same nation were fighting against each other, and for this reason, brothers and sisters, mothers and daughters, and so many family members were waging war against themselves. With this, we come to an end of our discussion on the introduction to the American Civil War. We have understood what the political setup of USA was before this war broke out in 1861. We have also understood what the very phrase Civil War means. In our subsequent lessons, we will trace the various reasons that caused the outbreak of this war. We will also try to trace the course that this war took and the toll that this took on the new nation of the United States of America. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon. You can also register for free at DeltaStep.com or download the DeltaStep app to learn one-to-one with our amazing teachers or to get access to all our 5,000 plus amazing videos as per your school syllabus. Master each topic with our adaptive practice technology. Get million-plus questions with step-by-step solutions and unlimited mock tests. Get all your doubts resolved instantly. Learn via games and win amazing prizes like PlayStations and iPads. So at DeltaStep, learning is not just fun and easy, it's rewarding too. So register for free now.